Are you a plan-ahead cook? Well, no matter even if you're not. Today we're going to show you some great recipe ideas for ready-when-you-are meals with Crockpot Cooking. Stay with us. Welcome to Let's Cook Together. I'm Barbara Nolan, and our guest cook today is Jennifer White from Hardeeville, Kentucky. She teaches nutrition classes, has written a cookbook, and has some wonderful recipes to share with us today for ready-when-you-are meals with Crockpot Cooking. Welcome to our show today, Jennifer.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
What will we be cooking today?
Well, I just have to tell you that I love my crockpot. It is my most used tool in my kitchen besides my favorite knife.
Well, this will be a good show for me because I have one but don't use it much.
Well, great. We'll do a good recipe to inspire you to use your crockpot more. Today we're going to do crockpot butternut squash soup.
Oh, really? Fantastic.
And would you like to read the recipe?
I'd be happy to. 1 medium butternut squash, 1/2 medium onion diced, 1/2 green bell pepper diced, 1 teaspoon of dried basil, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, 1/8 teaspoon of oregano, 4 cups of water, 3 1/2 cups of diced canned tomatoes, that's a 29-ounce can, 1 cup of corn kernels, which are optional, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Well, this sounds good.
Well, let's start our recipe. Like I said, there are many advantages to using a crockpot. My favorite advantage is that it's ready when you are.
Right.
You can put the ingredients in at some time when you have a few minutes, but then when you're tired or you don't have time, but you need to eat, and your family needs to eat, it's all ready and hot, ready and waiting for you.
Great for working mothers that have to go to a job and
excellent, yes,
come home to the meal already ready.
Exactly. Another advantage to crockpot cooking is that you really don't have to use as much oil as you would use in other. In fact, you can eliminate it altogether in most recipes.
Oh, that's a good thing to know.
And the slow cooker cooks slowly, so you don't have to, the flavors mingle better, and you don't have to worry about it burning, which is something that I really appreciate. Right. So, obviously our butternut squash soup will have butternut squash in it, and I thought I'd tell you how to choose a good butternut squash. It's good to get the ones that are heavy, that are free of blemishes, and that are very firm, because you know that it's fresh. One advantage to this vegetable is that you don't have to worry about this fresh vegetable spoiling. You know, if you go grocery shopping once a week, you need to use up that lettuce, use up that celery, but this will store for months in a cool, dry place, so you can really stock up on it and use it as a vegetable if you need something and you're all out of your other vegetables. So we'll start making this recipe by peeling our butternut squash, which isn't very hard if you have the type of peelers that the handle is here and you just peel down like this. You'll peel your butternut squash and then take a spoon to scoop out the seeds and cut them up into chunks, as we have done here. We've used 1 butternut squash, cut it up into chunks, and that's the first ingredient. And you don't have to have an exact amount, because 1 medium-sized butternut squash will do just fine.
What a bright, pretty orange color.
This is a very colorful soup. We'll enjoy seeing this one. Then we put in 1/2 of a medium onion and 1/2 of a green bell pepper. You can use red if you like, but I use green because we're putting tomatoes in, so it gives more.
A nice color.
Right. 1 teaspoon of basil, and you can crush it between your fingers if you like. And sometimes I've used fresh herbs in this recipe, but for convenience and quickness, we'll use the dried. And then 1 teaspoon of parsley, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of oregano. We'll add our 4 cups of water, and you can add your tomatoes if you'd like.
All right. See if I can do this without splashiness.
There we go. And then we'll put some corn in, which is optional. 3½ cups of corn. I like the color that adds to it. And we'll stir it up. We'll add our salt after it's done cooking. Sometimes salt can make corn a little bit tough. I really like this recipe because butternut squash is such a good source of vitamin A and fiber. So I like to add that into our diet as much as we can. More fiber, more vitamin A. Most orange vegetables are high in vitamin A. Now, crock pots, all crock pots I found are different. So you could say cook it for 8 hours in one crock pot and it'd be done in one and not done in the other. So sometimes it takes a little experimenting. But in general, you can cook this for 8 to 9 hours on low and it should come out nice. If you have an older crock pot, you may want to cook it on high because the older crock pots just don't heat up as well as the newer one. Mine will bring it to a nice boil.
Is there a difference in how much liquid you use when using a crock pot, or would you just use a regular recipe? Are there, you know,
yes, there is a
changes
difference.
you
You don't have to use as much liquid when you cook with a crock pot. It cooks at a very slow, low temperature, so it retains more of the liquids. So we'll cook this, and then when we're done cooking it, we'll add ½ teaspoon of salt, or you can add it to your taste because often there's a different amounts of salt in the tomatoes. If you're using home canned tomatoes, then you know how much salt is in it, but sometimes you don't know how much salt is in something, so you would want to salt it to taste. But about ½ teaspoon should work well. And it's such a colorful dish, and you saw how easy it was. The thing that takes the longest is peeling the butternut squash, but besides that, you just put it all in and you can have something quickly. If you plan ahead, you can have a wonderful hot meal just like that.
Well, you've inspired me to try to use my crock pot more. Well, let's show the finished product of our soup now.
It's very, very colorful. I think it's beautiful enough to serve for company.
That looked delicious. It's very colorful.
Yes. We put a little sprig of herb on there, and it's actually a full meal in itself. It's so filling. Well, what is the next recipe we're going to make? Well, let's show another way that we can use our crock pot.
Okay.
The way that I use it probably the most is to cook beans.
Oh, okay.
So let's do that.
All right. 4 cups dry red beans, uncooked, 10 cups of water, 1 garlic clove minced, 1 large onion diced, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, 1/2 teaspoon of dried basil, 1/4 teaspoon of dried oregano, 1 cup of tomato puree, 1 tablespoon of honey, and 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. Okay.
Well, we do dried beans often in our crock pot because they're such an easy main dish. They're very quick and simple and very good for us because beans are high in fiber and low in fat and good source of vitamins and minerals. So I'm going to show you how to do some beans in a quick and easy way. You buy the packages of dried beans at the store. Doing dried beans instead of using canned beans helps you to control the amount of salt used, and I think they taste so much better too. You can get them nice and tender. So I pour them out on a towel and sort through them. You know, they're an agricultural product, so there might be some stones or dirt in them, and take those out. And I think this is the easy way to do it. My girlfriend taught me how to do it this way rather than putting them all over the counter. And once you have them clean, you just can dump them into your colander and rinse them under some running water, and then add them to your crock pot. And for 4 cups of dry beans, we'll add about 10 cups of water. All crock pots cook differently, so again, you may do some adjusting, but in general, that should work just fine. Now, we'll put this in our cooker, in our slow cooker, and cook it on high for 6 to 12 hours. It's wonderful that we can have such a wide range in time.
Yes, and on high too.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't realize you could do that.
The longer you boil beans, the more tender and good they are.
So these dry beans, would they get about twice the size or 3 times the size?
About that. About 1 cup of beans equals about 2 1/4 cups of cooked beans. 1 cup of dry beans equals that.
You know, I cooked beans once, dried beans, and I cooked those little rascals and cooked them and cooked them and cooked them, and they never did get soft.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you could give me an idea of what I did wrong or what the problem was.
Well, it could be a number of things. The beans could have been old, so it would be no fault of yours. Nothing you can do about it. They just had some old beans on the shelf. So that might be it. Other things that you can do to help make sure that your beans turn out nice and tender is not to add any acidic product to your beans, like lemon juice or tomato sauce or anything. So in this recipe, we'll make sure we add the tomato sauce at the end.
Okay.
But it's likely you got some old beans. That happens.
Okay.
So we'll put this in the crock pot and we'll cook it. And it's nice that we can just have it ready whenever we want. And the longer you cook it, the better they are. They're so nice and tender. We want to cook them on high. But some of the old crock pots just don't cook high enough. The beans need to boil in order to be well digestible or well digested by your body. They really do need to boil. So make sure that if you're trying to cook beans in a crock pot that you have one of the newer models that cook
Get hot
well.
enough. Yes.
Right.
Okay,
right.
well that's a good thing to know.
So we're going to put this over here and pretend that it's cooking in our crock pot. And when our beans are done cooking, we're going to add some sauteed onions. So we'll get our onions sauteing here. And then once they get a little bit soft, we will add our garlic. And of course, if you want to, you can add lots of garlic and onions to your beans. We like to add whole cloves sometimes. If you put these in at the beginning of your cooking time, they tend to lose their flavor. So that's why I cook the beans first and then add the sauteed onions and the garlic. Maybe you can show us what our cooked beans look like while I saute this onion. This is what they'll look like when they're cooked. And of course, we can eat them this way without adding anything to them. Sure, a little salt and they're delicious.
They smell very good.
But if we want to add a little more flavor to them, we can saute this onion and garlic together and add that to the beans. While this is sauteing, we can, jumping garlic. We could add the 1 teaspoon of parsley, the 1/2 teaspoon of basil, and a 1/4 teaspoon of oregano. And then we'll put our onion and garlic in there and stir that up.
Things are smelling good.
Nothing like a good pot of beans. And then a few other things we want to add to that to give it a little more flavor is a tablespoon of honey, and yes, we'll add the tomato puree as well. You don't have to, the honey is optional, but it does give it kind of tend to bring the flavor out a little.
So you want me to go ahead and add this now?
Yes, that's a cup of tomato puree, which is simply tomatoes. So we know it's a healthful product. And we'll mix that up. Now, for best results, we want to add the salts too. The salt, 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. For best results, we'll want to cook that a little longer to help the flavors mingle, even though we've already sauteed the onions, so they don't really need to cook anymore. It does taste better if you let the flavors mingle. So if you're coming home from work or something, just add these ingredients to it, and while you relax or everybody gets together for dinner, it can be cooking, and so it can be ready to go when you are.
Well, that's wonderful.
And we have a final product here that you can see what it looks like.
Oh, yes.
Nicely ready to eat. As my husband would say, it looks good enough to eat.
Yes, very good. I like beans. They're so nutritious.
And they're very easy. They really are.
A real southern type dish.
When you really
beans, cornbred.
When I'm pressed for time, I usually will make beans. And my husband likes them, so that really helps a lot that he likes them. But you know, dinner is not the only thing you can cook in a crock pot. In the morning, when you really don't feel like cooking, you can have breakfast ready and waiting for you.
All ready for you wake up? It's smelling good down there?
Yes. So maybe we could make a breakfast recipe.
I always hear about that, but I've never tried it. Okay. We're going to fix creamy breakfast rice. The ingredients are 2 cups of short or long grain brown rice, 8 cups of water, and 1 teaspoon of salt. So that's simple enough.
It is really simple, quick and easy. You know, most people don't think of rice for breakfast. Usually it's a side dish to a loaf or something like that, to beans, but it's delicious for breakfast. And so we're going to use 2 cups of rice. Now, if you have the privilege of knowing where to obtain short grain brown rice, definitely try the short grain brown rice.
Is it even better?
Oh, it's delicious with creamy breakfast rice because it has such a chewy texture and it's a little bit sweet, so it's really good. But if you can't, the long grain works great too. Then you just add a little bit of salt to your taste. I use about 1 teaspoon. And then the ratio is for every 1 cup of grain, use 4 cups of water. So we are putting in 8 cups of water. And that's it. Is that quick or what? You just put it in.
So many people complain that they don't eat breakfast because they just don't have time to fix it. So this would be a wonderful solution to their problem.
Exactly.
Just put something quick like this on at night, and when you get up in the morning, it's all ready for you.
Exactly. You just put it in your crock pot, and you could really cook it on low or high all night.
Really?
Yes, if you cook it on high, you'll get a crispy edge around the outside, and my children like to take that out and eat that separate. They would just really like that. One way to make sure that your rice doesn't stick to the edge of your crock pot is to coat the inside with lecithin. It works really well, but if you don't have lecithin, you can do this little trick. Turn it off about a half an hour before you're ready to eat, and the rice will
soften it up.
Right, that will pull away from the sides. You know, ready-to-eat box cereal is so expensive.
It is.
And this is just a good alternative. And it's also very difficult to find box cereal that doesn't have refined products in it, such as refined flours or sugar. So this doesn't have refined products in it. And much
It also
less,
has a lot of preservatives as well, I
right,
think.
the box cereal. So this is just nice and good for you. Now, if you think that's going to be a problem to not have a sweet cereal, that's okay. Just add some raisins and dates and dried fruit, other kinds of dried fruit or fresh fruit, and it'll sweeten your cereal right up. Or you can add your own honey to it. But that way you can control the sweetener. And it's much less
It's a natural sweetener that's slowly released in your body.
Right, not the refined sugar that you get from the box cereals. We have a finished product that we've put some fruit on.
Let me show it. This looks so good.
And this is just one way that you can garnish it. Of course, there are innumerable ways that you just put whatever is your favorite type of fruit on it.
I imagine you would put milk with this, your soy milk.
If you'd like. Sometimes what we like to do is eat it like we would eat grits on a plate. It's very thick, so on a plate with a little salt
So
on
it's
top.
versatile.
Yes, yes. It's a wonderful, good breakfast. But of course, rice isn't the only thing you can make for breakfast. We can
What other ideas do you have?
We can make some apple oats.
Oh, great. Okay, well, the recipe for it calls for 4 cups of rolled oats, 7 cups of water, 2 cups of apple juice, 2 cups of diced apples, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 cup of chopped nuts, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt.
You know, for some people, breakfast is oatmeal. But then some people don't really like oatmeal. So I think that this recipe is a good way to help those who don't like oatmeal enjoy it a little bit more. It's kind of naturally sweet.
Kind of fancied up.
Yes. We'll start with 4 cups of rolled oats. Now, oats break the rule of the 4-to-1 ratio for cooking grains. That rule really holds best for whole grains, the berries. But the 4 cups of rolled oats only require 7 cups of water. So we'll put our water in. Now, we want to make it sweet, but we don't want to put sugar in it. One good way to do it is to add juice. And I chose apple juice, but we've made it with orange juice, pineapple juice. We even made it with grape juice once, and it was a really interesting color, but everybody liked it. But it's a good natural sweetener. And I used 2 cups of apple juice in this recipe. Again, we can add even more of a more natural sweetener by using fresh fruit. So we're adding some,
Fresh apples.
yes, some apples to that. And so it's a great way to get the fruit in our diet at the same time as making our oatmeal sweet. And a half a teaspoon of salt really helps give it a little bit of a buttery flavor. Now we'll put that in our slow cooker and cook it on low for 7 to 9 hours. And if you wake up in the morning, you're going to smell a wonderful smell.
Nice way to wake up.
Yes, going through the house. You're just going to be ready for breakfast, and there's no work involved. Right in the morning when you don't feel like doing work, it's all ready. When it's done cooking, then we'll want to add some vanilla when it's all done cooking, and we'll add also some chopped nuts to it. You can add nuts at the beginning of the cooking time, and they get an interesting soft texture. But if you like your nuts crunchy, then you can add them after they're done. It's just a really good option, a really good way to help get off of the sugary breakfast by putting in your own fresh fruits, maybe a little bit of honey, and using juice to cook the grains with. And it's so easy and so much less expensive than the box cereals.
And these nuts have a lot of benefits to them too, don't they?
They do. They're very high in fiber. So you're not only getting a lot of fiber in these oats, but you're getting the fiber in the nuts.
Fiber in the apples as well.
Yes, right. A lot of times, even when the breakfast cereals are made with grains, a lot of times the grains are still refined. So we know that the oats are not refined. So they retain the fiber, they retain the essential fatty acids and the minerals. So it's good to eat it as close to the way that God provided us with it as possible.
So this is a wonderful thing you're doing for your family by doing this.
Yes. So let's see what the final product looks like. Oh, it looks good.
So good and wholesome.
Now we could put a little bit of soy milk on that. Okay. And oh, that looks good. You could add some toast and maybe a fresh banana or a fresh orange, and you have just a wonderful breakfast. Very good for you. You won't get the sugar high and the low about mid-morning if you eat a good hearty breakfast like this. The fiber will just keep it with you and keep you going.
I suppose if you wanted to twist on this, you could add some cardamom to it.
Sure, yes.
For a cinnamon-like flavor.
Right, and you can vary the different kinds of fresh fruits. Sometimes we'll cook it without fruit and then add blueberries when we're done. That's
They're
our favorite.
so nutritious.
You could take the frozen blueberries out of the freezer, put them on your hot oats, and they just kind of get the little frosty look on the outside of them. We really like that a lot. Or any kind of fresh fruit that you have will work just wonderfully with these oats. So an inexpensive yet good for you breakfast that's easy with
fantastic.
Using the whole grains as the way that God prepared them for us.
Well, we're going to take a short break now, and we'll be back in just a moment.
We hope you've enjoyed cooking with Jennifer White. Now let's take a moment to review our Crockpot cooking recipes. For the butternut squash soup, you will need 1 medium butternut squash, 1/2 of a medium onion, 1/2 of a green bell pepper, 1 teaspoon of dried basil, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, 1/8 teaspoon of oregano, 4 cups of water, 3 1/2 cups of diced canned tomatoes, 1 cup of corn kernels, which is optional, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. For the slow cooker red beans, you will need 4 cups of dry red beans, uncooked, 10 cups of water, 1 clove of garlic, 1 large onion, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, 1/2 teaspoon of dried basil, 1/4 teaspoon of dried oregano, 1 cup of tomato puree, 1 tablespoon of honey, and 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. For the creamy breakfast rice, you will need 2 cups short or long grain brown rice, 8 cups of water, and 1 teaspoon of salt. For the overnight apple oats, you will need 4 cups of rolled oats, 7 cups of water, 2 cups of apple juice, 2 cups of diced apples, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 cup of chopped nuts, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. If you would like information on how you can contact Jennifer, or if you would like to receive today's recipes, please write to 3ABN, Post Office Box 220, West Frankfort, Illinois 62896, or call 1-800-752-3226. Again, that's 3ABN, Post Office Box 220, West Frankfort, Illinois 62896. Now let's take a look at our finished recipes with Jennifer.
Welcome back. Well, Jennifer, do you have anything else you want to tell us about Crockpot cooking?
Well, you know, Crockpot cooking really can make life easier because you can have things cooking while you're away or while you're busy, and you don't have to worry about watching it, being afraid that it's going to burn or overcook.
Even while you're sleeping.
Right, right. It's a really good way to cook things on a busy schedule, when you're on a busy schedule. And I really, like I said, I use my Crockpot nearly every day. It's very convenient. So I encourage you to try to use the Crockpot more.
I intend to start using mine more.
Wonderful. Well, how about if we look at the products that we
All right, let's do that.
First, we'll start with our butternut squash soup. It's a wonderful, healthful dish that is quick to make and we can make in the Crockpot. It's full of vitamin A, has a good amount of fiber, and it even has some calcium in it. 1 cup of butternut actually has 84 milligrams of calcium in it. So it's a very healthful dish and very colorful, beautiful, even pretty enough to serve for company. And you can have it cooking while you're at church so that when your company gets home, you have a hot dish ready and waiting for them, no cooking needed.
That's wonderful.
Yes. And then next we made some beans in our Crockpot, which really is the ideal Crockpot food. They cook so nicely in the Crockpot, much better than they do in the pan. Very nice texture.
They just get softer, don't they?
Yes, yes. And they're really the perfect main dish because they're a good source of minerals and protein, high in fiber, low in fat. So we made our beans there, our red beans, and then we decided that we would make some breakfast in a Crockpot. So we made creamy rice and garnished it with some fruit. And of course you can be creative with that and vary your fruits and nuts. And we made the traditional oatmeal breakfast that we sweetened up with some fresh apples and some good apple juice so we could sweeten it naturally. And it's just a good high fiber breakfast that will stick with you through the day.
I know we will all enjoy trying these. I know I will. Well, our time is almost up for today. I can't believe it's almost gone. Thank you for coming, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
And I hope you will join with us next time, and let's cook together.
It's all ready and hot, ready and waiting for you.
Great for working mothers that have to go to a job and
Excellent, yes.
come home to the meal already ready.
Exactly. Another advantage to Crockpot cooking is that you really don't have to use as much oil as you would use in other, in fact you can eliminate it altogether in most recipes.
Oh, that's a good thing to know.
And the slow cooker cooks slowly, so you don't have to, the flavors mingle better, and you don't have to worry about it burning, which is something that I really appreciate. Right. So, obviously our butternut squash soup will have butternut squash in it, and I thought I'd tell you how to choose a good butternut squash. It's good to get the ones that are heavy, that are free of blemishes, and that are very firm, because you know that it's fresh. One advantage to this vegetable is that you don't have to worry about this fresh vegetable spoiling. You know, if you go grocery shopping once a week, you need to use up that lettuce, use up that celery, but this will store for months in a cool, dry place, so you can really stock up on it and use it as a vegetable if you need something and you're all out of your other vegetables. So we'll start making this recipe by peeling our butternut squash, which isn't very hard if you have the type of peelers that the handle is here and you just peel down like this. You'll peel your butternut squash and then take a spoon to scoop out the seeds and cut them up into chunks, as we have done here. We've used
Squash, 1/2 medium onion diced, 1/2 green bell pepper diced, 1 teaspoon of dried basil, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, 1/8 teaspoon of oregano, 4 cups of water, 3 1/2 cups of diced canned tomatoes, that's a 29-ounce can, 1 cup of corn kernels, which are optional, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Well, this sounds good.
Well, let's start our recipe. Like I said, there are many advantages to using a crock pot. My favorite advantage is that it's ready when you are.
Right.
You can put the ingredients in at some time when you have a few minutes, but then when you're tired or you don't have time, but you need to eat, and your family needs to eat.
Our guest cook today is Jennifer White from Hardeeville, Kentucky. She teaches nutrition classes, has written a cookbook, and has some wonderful recipes to share with us today for ready when you are meals with Crockpot Cooking. Welcome to our show today, Jennifer.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
What will we be cooking today?
Well, I just have to tell you that I love my crock pot. It is my most used tool in my kitchen besides my favorite knife.
Well, this will be a good show for me because I have one but don't use it much.
Well, great. We'll do a good recipe to inspire you to use your crock pot more. Today we're going to do crock pot butternut squash soup.
Oh, really? Fantastic.
And would you like to read the recipe?
I'd be happy to. 1 medium butternut squash. Are you a plan-ahead cook? Well, no matter even if you're not. Today we're going to show you some great recipe ideas for ready when you are meals with Crockpot Cooking. Stay with us. Welcome to Let's Cook Together. I'm Barbara Nolan.